Welcome to today's Making Human Connections in a Virtual World webinar. My name is Kaylee and I am the Marketing Campaigns Manager here at GoCo. Welcome in. I see people slowly trickling in. So why don't we have sort of a kickoff question? Where are you tuning in from? I am currently in Dallas, Texas. It's starting to get a little gloomy, rainy looking outside. And then Amber, I know you're in Houston, so it's been pretty bad there.
Yeah, we're definitely getting lots of rain in Houston right now.
And then Natasha, what about you? Where are you located right now?
So I'm Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where it is usually rainy and gloomy. Today is one of our few sunny days, so it's very exciting.
Hey, that's exciting. Well, I see we have people from all over the country joining us today. I saw a Plano, Texas. That's right in my backyard. So welcome. We have some Florida. I think I saw Pittsburgh come through. So we have people from all over joining us today. So welcome. We'll give it just a couple more seconds. I see the attendees start to trickle down a little bit, get a little slower. So we are just so excited to have you all here today. At the end of the webinar, I will definitely share the SHRM code in the chat for everyone to use and redeem as SHRM recertification credit. And then I as well will just share the recording after the webinar. So we'll make sure to get that all to everyone at the end. All right, it looks like we're slowing down, so I'm going to share my screen. All right, so welcome everyone to Making Human Connections in a Virtual World. I will just go over some housekeeping things. So if you have any questions throughout this webinar, please make sure to put them in the Q&A section in the Zoom instead of the chat. It's just a little hard for us to monitor chat while we're going through our questions and answers. So if you could put them in the Q&A, we'll get to those at the end. As I said, if you hadn't joined before, we will put the SHRM code in the chat towards the end of the webinar. So make sure to keep an eye out for that. And then we will also send the recording at the end of the webinar, probably later today or early tomorrow. So make sure you're on the lookout for that. And with that, we'll do a quick meet the speakers. So my name is Kaylee Hansen. I'm the Marketing Campaigns Manager here at GoCo. So I do any and all things webinars. So I plan the webinars, do a lot of behind the scenes stuff. I know you normally see Ashley on these, but I will be joining today. So Amber, do you want to kick it off?
Yeah, so thank you, Kaylee, for all of this. She's doing a phenomenal job. My name is Amber Anzalone. I am the People Operations Manager at GoCo and my brand, right? First, I'm going to break the official public speaking rule of all time, which is you don't tell people when you're nervous or if it's your first time, but I like to thrive in vulnerability and transparency. So I'm just throwing it out there. Really, really excited to be here though. And Natasha has been so gracious with me as well as Kaylee. So I focus on all things people at GoCo, starting from acquiring talent all the way through their journey, looking at engagement and ensuring that we have an environment where they can thrive. And a little bit of background on me is that I spent the start of my career in marketing and business development, realized I loved people, but I loved internal people more. So shifted into the culture space and I've been hanging out here for about 5 years now. What about you, Natasha?
Absolutely. So I'm Natasha Molina. I'm a Senior People Business Partner with Employ, which is the parent company for Jazz HR. Jazz HR is an applicant tracking system. So really there to help our small and mid-market folks help get their recruitment and find great talent to bring into their organizations. I've been in HR for a little over a decade. So to be completely fair, I did a lot of public speaking. I was in learning and development for a long time. So a little bit easier, and I still get nervous. So definitely excited to be here and to talk a little bit about, just really making those connections and helping folks find new ways and new pathways to do so.
Awesome. Thank y'all both so much. So we are going to launch directly into a poll question. So what kind of a work environment does your company have? Is it primarily 100% in office, hybrid, remote? We'd love to know your answers, and that'll help us really shape what we're going to talk about later on. All right, we have these answers rolling in. We will give just a couple more seconds for everyone to answer. The results are skewing what I thought, so I'm excited to share these. All right, 3, 2, 1. I'm going to share those results. So yes, we do have primarily HR pros who work in a hybrid or remote environment on this webinar today. And even for those who have 100% in office, our team has some really great initiatives to talk about later in this webinar. So y'all will get some really great tips as well. All right, so let's kick it off with our very first question. So we just asked the audience what their environment was like. What about y'all? What are your company like when it comes to in office, remote, or hybrid? And what's that reasoning? So Natasha, do you want to kick it off?
Absolutely. So with Jazz HR, we are a hybrid workforce. We were fully in person, just like most companies before the pandemic, and then realized as we were bringing people back that we were able to really expand our workforce and find people not only all over the country, but really all over the world that we could bring in and develop our product, and to really make sure that we were reaching our customers and being a great workforce. But we also found that there are a lot of people who want to have that in-person option. So we do have a few offices that we reopened, and we give our employees the opportunity to define their experience and to really transition into, do they want to stay fully remote? Do they want the opportunity to come into office? Do they want something else? I'm usually a 1 to 2 day a weeker. And really just, we asked them, we listened, and that's what we went forward with. What about you, Amber?
Yeah, so at GoCo, we also are a hybrid work environment. We probably lean a little more on the remote side than hybrid, and we have employees all over the globe as well. And we didn't always start that way. So we actually were really steadfast in the in-office lane for a long time, but the pandemic did change that. And as we pivoted, we really tried to find a way to hold on to that tech startup, fun and exciting culture and office experience with the games, but trying to find new ways to bring that into that hybrid or remote world. So that it has been really a really exciting journey for us. And we found that this is really a good space, and that's where we're going to stay.
I love that. I see some people in the chat saying that they're also remote and they've found a lot higher level of productivity when it made that transition. So that is great to hear. All right, let's go to the next question. So what do you think are benefits that employees get from a remote or hybrid work environment? And on the other hand, how does it pose potential challenges? I mean, it's not always smooth sailing. And so Amber, do you want to kick this one off, whether you want to talk about just one portion of the question or both?
Yeah, so I think for us, what has been really interesting, I touched on earlier, is that we've actually been able to open our talent field across the globe, and so we have employees all over the place. So when we think about our international employees, we were able to really dive into new areas to bring in diversity and culture into our workspace, and really just enhance that experience for everyone that was involved. And with that, we've been able to really try to find ways to ensure that that sense of connection that you get with those in-person interactions is replicated virtually. And so for us, we have these great experiences where we're fortunate enough to get to bring all of our international employees in person once a week to have what we like to call we call it Rush Week, but our GoConuts all come in, and it's all 130 of us, and we're in our workspace, and we're just having these interactions and environment where we're really thriving, living in that culture. And that's great, right? That's a huge benefit. We all are getting this exposure, but that's once a year, right? So there's downsides to that of thinking about the isolation, or maybe not feeling that connection and not getting to have that interaction on a day-to-day basis. So we've really had to focus our efforts in being intentional in the way that we deliver those meaningful moments of connection with our employees that are not stateside, so that they're also feeling really a part of the GoCo team.
Yeah,
what about
absolutely.
you, Natasha?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. We see a lot of the same things, a lot of the same benefits and challenges. We know with a remote workforce, you can have a better work-life balance. I saw a couple of people in the chat bring that up as well, of it gives employees more flexibility. It gives an opportunity for more diversity in the workforce. You can be more welcoming to working parents, or whatever your life throws at you. You have the ability to really make sure that that's part of it. But with that remote also comes that isolation. We get a lot of feedback on people feeling siloed or disconnected. If you're on a team and everyone is all over the place, you might not have had an opportunity to meet them in person. And it's hard to build those work connections and those friendships that we really count on when you spend most of your life at work. So we've had to do the same thing of being very intentional in what does that look like? How do we bring people in who are remote so that they can meet each other and spend time? It's the upside to the hybrid. You still have that work-life balance. You can decide what that looks like for you from a flexibility standpoint, but you also have the ability to not be in your house all day, every day for day on day on day on day, and have that isolation that can bring its own set of challenges for each person. We like to bring people together when we can. So we just recently, and not that recently, I guess it's February now, but we had our big sales kickoff. And so we were able to bring our sales team all together from everywhere and just let them spend a few days in partnership and learning from each other and meeting each other. And the people that you've spoken to on the computer for months or years, you really got to spend some time with. So just really great opportunity that we were fortunate to have.
Perfect. Yeah, that is great. I've seen some people in the chat put that you have to be very disciplined to work from home too. So it's not what everyone wants. And so having those options for your company is very beneficial. We're going to go into another audience poll now. So we're talking a lot about connectivity and engagement. How confident do you feel that your remote or hybrid employees feel connected to your company? So let me launch this poll. I'm really interested to hear what everyone has to say with this. Are you confident that everyone feels like very connected and engaged? Are you somewhat confident, think you could do a little better? Or are you not confident at all? Do you know that your employees are not feeling as connected when they're working remotely? We still have a couple people trickling in. Let me give you 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's end the poll and share the results. All right, so definitely leaning a lot more somewhat confident. We have some people who feel very confident, which is great, and then others who are not confident at all, which is completely fine. We hope you get some great tips and tricks throughout the rest of this webinar. All right, next question is, what are some strategies for increasing and maintaining engagement as a means to break down silos that are created? Natasha, I know that you were just talking about silos, so this is a great segue into having you answer first.
Absolutely. So when I started with Jazz HR, we were still fully remote. And so this was the complaint that I heard most from our employees in different sections of our community was we feel siloed. We don't get to meet people. We don't get to see people. And so to start to try and break down those challenges, and especially as our company has expanded, we've really tried to be intentional in bringing people into that virtual space for reasons that aren't just work. So we do things like coffee chats where anyone who wanted to was able to sign up, and we would randomize everybody's name and pair you up with a stranger, someone that works for the company that you might not have had an opportunity to talk about, and ask them to spend at least 15 minutes chatting about anything except for work. So your family, your dogs, your kids, where you live, what the weather's like, whatever it was, and really tried to bring some camaraderie into that for that hybrid focus and really bringing people in. We try to do summits, we try to bring teams together and make sure that they have the opportunity to sit in person at least once a year, maybe for a day or two, just to give them that face-to-face time and to have that after work time where you build those connections. It's the sitting around and chatting or the conversations that you have over lunch that you tend to miss when you are in that remote workforce. So really trying to do that. Also, just some general events or games for the people and talent team. We have a big quarterly meeting and we always make sure to add a game to it. So we have a very competitive team when it comes to Pictionary, which is usually hilarious when you're trying to do it on a mouse, but it is something that the team looks forward to. We talk about, and there's some competitive smack talk that goes around, but it's really helped bring that sense of community into the team.
I love what I hear you saying, and I'm thinking about some of the stuff that you're listing, and I'm jotting some of that down myself because they're great ideas, and it makes me think about even asking such simple questions at the kickoff of like all hands meetings of like, how do you prefer your eggs, or a Texas favorite, which is, do beans belong in chili? I mean, that thing that gets heated in the GoCo space. But I feel like you really touched on answering that question. So I'm going to actually go a different direction and just kind of speak to the why behind the value of it, of breaking down those silos, because I think that when we think about that human component and that value thought process, I guess, of when I don't get to have that conversation over lunch, or whenever a person doesn't get to stop someone in the hallway and see, oh, you seem a little stressed, like what's going on? What project are you working on? When there are not intentional conversations surrounding how a person is directly impacting the business, it's a little bit harder for people to kind of understand the significance or the impact that their role has on hitting those organizational goals, right? And so I think that it's really, really insightful and important for us to think about understanding what each person does, what each role does, and the part that it plays and how it serves the bigger objectives of the business as well. So for us, we found that something as simple as eliminating reserving desks, like before you go into the office on your hybrid days, has actually broken down those silos, because our departments would reserve seats ahead of time and they'd all sit in the same space. And so when we took that option away, really a lot of people were like, oh, I love this, because now I can sit by the engineers, or now I can sit beside the trainer and I can ask all these questions. And so even with something as small as that, and just eliminating some of those barriers to make that time together really, really and maximizing it, it's made a huge impact for us as well.
Just to go off the back of that, Amber, I know that whenever I first came into GoCo, I started at GoCo in January. I went down to Houston for a couple of days just for orientation. And it was crazy to me to not have like assigned desks, but I also loved it at the same time because I felt a little more comfortable going and talking to other people for the first time who were in different departments instead of just staying in my little marketing bubble. So I really appreciate that. And Natasha, Pictionary sounds so much fun. I love that idea. We just did GoCo trivia and I learned some crazy facts, but I also learned that some people on our team are just trivia masters. So it's always just fun to do different events like that.
It is. I didn't know that there were such strong opinions about chili, but we did have a chili cook-off for our in-office folks. So glad it wasn't just us, really judging.
Okay, now I have to know, Natasha and Amber, do y'all think that beans belong in chili?
I do.
I
like
yeah.
that.
I love that. Perfect. So the next question are, what tools and technology do you recommend to improve or streamline employee engagement activities? We have some people in the chat asking about, icebreakers or different things they can do. So Amber, do you want to kick this one off?
Yeah, so I am a number one GoCo fangirl. I will have to put that out there. I actually came from an organization where I did my onboarding and all of my HR work by hand. So getting that HRS experience with GoCo has just been incredible for me. But what I really love about GoCo and how I utilize it for myself is I use it to create these experiences. And so when I think about certain things, like we have something called GoCo Go Compete, and it's a fitness and wellness challenge. We use our product and we're able to actually have these like daily challenges that have time zones tied to them. So you have 24 hours to complete these fitness activities, like go for a walk or take a cuddle your pet, or take a picture of you doing something that support your mental health and wellness. And so you get to upload these photos onto the Slack channel, and everyone's getting to be a part of you, like living out these experiences, regardless of what your time frame is. And so we'll sign on, and at like 4 or 5 a.m., we have people posting pictures of them at the gym, but that's normal time for them there. And so we're getting to be a part of these moments of experience while that's happening versus only offering it in certain spaces. And so that's been a really, really cool experience. But if other ways that I feel like are really, really exciting for us also is we use services like something called Donut Meetups, which is a software service that allows us to have randomized team meetings, which I think Natasha spoke a little bit to that. So we get randomly paired with people, and our CEO participates in it. So when someone gets that time with the CEO, they're just, that's really exciting for them. Or something like Office Vibes, which is like an employee engagement pulse survey. And so we're able to really ask people how things are going and how they're feeling in their space. And then we're able to get those results in real time and say, oh, you know what, we need to take a step back and really look at this space. I think we need some support here. So really focusing on how we're going to direct our narrative. So that's just some of the ways we've used our technology. And of course, Slack channels, if you have them. I personally am a huge fan of the GoCo Pets channel. I love all pets, anything. I do not have children, so I want to talk about your pets. And so that's a personal favorite, but we even have a gaming channel. as well as a craft channel. Like it varies. So you're able to really customize that to whatever your brand and your cultures for your company to really make it unique to whoever you are. What about you, Natasha?
Absolutely. I love that. We have some of the same Slack channels. The pet one is my favorite. I'm a big dog person. Most of our team is. So on a really stressful day, it's nice to have that opportunity to just go into that space and take a look at everyone's really cute animals and things like that. Of course, I have to plug Jazz HR, right? As an applicant tracking system, you really have the opportunity to standardize your onboarding process and figure out what do you want to let people know about the company? What is the culture? How do you be intentional about letting people know what they're coming into? And then on the back end of that, once they're in, we're able to really be in community with them, work with our partners to make sure that they do have that positive onboarding process. We use a tool called Culture Amp to do engagement surveys. So also really going out and asking people, what's going well? Are you engaged? How do you feel about this? How are our managers doing? How is our leadership team doing? What can we do? And they help us take the results and really understand, what does it mean? What are those breakdowns? And then what can we do to make sure that we are engaging on the back end? If we're seeing some of those less than positive reactions, what are some strategies that we can use? And that's when we know, okay, people are still feeling siloed. So what else can we do? What else can we bring in? What tools do we have to do a trivia day or whatever that looks like? Are some of the issues a little bit deeper? Maybe we thought that it was they needed a game day and they really need more a company meeting to understand what some of the changes that we're going through are. So really taking the time to ask them and then to try and strategize to bring it, or to ask them, what are we missing? How do we do this? What are your suggestions? And letting those employees have a voice so that they really do feel connected and empowered to have the experience that they want and to stay engaged and to feel connected.
I love all of that. That is all amazing. Amber, I was hoping that maybe you can also talk for a quick minute about our taco system here at GoCo, because as goofy as it sounds, we have a taco system. And that was one thing when I first started at GoCo that kind of just blew my mind in terms of employee engagement and employee recognition. So if you don't mind quickly talking about that as well, that would be great. And then Natasha, if you have anything similar after Amber describes it a little bit.
Yeah, so we have something called Hey Taco, and it's built into Slack, and it's like an employee recognition opportunity. So it gives our employees the ability to have peer-to-peer nomination. All of our employees get 10 tacos each, and then at different layers or different positions, they get extra tacos so that managers can always have enough to give out, or our trainers can advocate or support or celebrate people who are going through the learning process. And so once you accumulate so many tacos, you can go into the taco store that has a bunch of GoCo swag. And so people are really excited to try to earn all of these points to then get to spend their tacos on swag. And it's not just GoCo branded merchandise. We also try to do like gift card vouchers that they can get instantaneously. And so of course, it's a lot of fun to get swag and to get free stuff. But what we've really found is people just love just giving kudos to their peers and like just getting other people excited and celebrating their big wins. And so something as simple as a person that here's a great example. Someone actually posted a picture of their pets. I think it was maybe a dog's paw in the Go Compete challenge, right? So it was someone's pet's leg, and it somehow got carried over to our Slack channel of the GoCo pets. And then it became this thing unspoken where people were just posting random pictures and photos of their pets' appendages, I'm not sure, their limb, paw, or whatever it was. And it was just this like natural organic thing that took place because these technologies existed, and people who loved something or they had like a really good pun with their post got a taco. They were able to give them the rewards or just to celebrate and have fun in that space with these elements, because these simple tools were available to them for them to get to really dive into it. So it's really fun to like see those things naturally occur. And still to date, probably my favorite Slack thread was the paw thread.
I love that. That is so much fun. And I would be sending paws to everyone. To your point, especially swag, I feel is a really great way to just make people feel connected. We always send some swag to our new hires, make sure that that's part of the onboarding. So even if it's a Jazz HR sticker or you have your Jazz HR t-shirt, whatever that looks like, it really helps people just feel connected in the company. We do something similar with our Values Champs program. So you can nominate your peers, someone who really helped you or did something really great for you. You have the opportunity to just say, hey, this is fantastic. Also, part of our Culture Amp contract, we have something called anytime feedback. So you can just go in, throw in the feedback, and it goes to that person. They get an email like, somebody said that you did an amazing job. Thanks so much. It also goes to their manager. So their manager has the opportunity to see that feedback and to see, I might not be involved in the day-to-day. I might not know how above and beyond this person is going to help their peers within their department and without of it. But there it is, all laid out for them. And we're getting ready to turn on a new capability. They just sent us shout outs, which is that Slack channel that allows you to tie into the company values and say, you did a really great job of this value. Thank you so much. And it sends out that Slack. So it is that public recognition where people can really feel that thank you, or just that kudos of, you know what, it might not have been a big deal to me, but it was a really big deal to my colleague. And that it always makes you feel good, right? You want to be helpful. And so it's just nice to know that it's appreciated.
I love that. Natasha, someone in the chat asked, which platform do you use for the anytime feedback?
That is also through our Culture platform. So it's all integrated together. It's really helpful. It's been a nice partnership.
Perfect. I love it. We still have people debating about the beans and chili as well. So I love that. We're going to go on to the next question. So what are some conversations HR pros can have with their C-suite to bring forth, different ideas, technology that could be successfully considered for future remote or hybrid initiatives? Natasha, why don't you kick us off on this one?
Absolutely. I'm a data person. I love data and analytics. I will break down a spreadsheet and create 6 more because of it. And so I am a firm believer that when you need to bring your C-suite on, the best way that you can do it is show them the data on what does this mean for the company's bottom line. Of course, especially as HR professionals, we're supporting our employees and we're putting that people first, but we also have to be on the business end of it of what does this mean for the business? What value is it bringing? What is the return on investment when we're spending a lot on these programs and these partnerships and everything that we're bringing in? So I firmly believe that a really great PowerPoint with the numbers behind it of, look, this is how engagement saves us money. If we have company loyalty, if we have employees who are happy here, they're going to stay. If we start putting together the numbers of what happens when we have employee turnover, we know that there's about a 30% cost for every employee that you lose and having to rehire them. So if we have the wrong engagement, if people don't feel supported, if we have those moments of disengagement, and so they're getting less work done, it's costing the company money. And for our executives, that's a really helpful selling point of what else could we do with the money that we were wasting by letting people walk out the door. So I'm a numbers person. I believe in them. I get teased a lot for it, but it really does help for that selling point. What about you, Amber?
Well, I'm going to go opposite and say that though I love the numbers, like that's super important. What I did want to kind of pose was, or play devil's advocate on, is maybe I already have a C-suite who opens the conversation for me and is really bought in and is just like, oh no, let's go for it. Engagement, culture, whatever you want to do, like I support that. I've actually been really fortunate to experience that. So I haven't had to push. I think the numbers is always an awesome starting point, and that's always a great driver. But I've actually been able to kind of dive in and then know, well, where do we get started? Because I already have that support in that space. And so what I have found in that experience is that really taking that step back, if you already have that support, and listening to and asking and really listening to what the needs are, which Natasha, you spoke to that, right? It's really, really best for us just to figure out what are the areas and pain points that our employees are needing, and not asking at the management level, but asking at that employee level, because the people who are really experiencing those day-to-day, maybe those pain points that we aren't necessarily aware of that exist. And so really dialing that down and hearing what they have to say, and then focusing our efforts in those areas has been really beneficial. And then getting to go back and have those conversations, and just really starting to dive in, and then getting to also share those experiences back with the CEO has been really fun, or with the C-suite as well, has been really, really fun. So a different kind of bringing that experience to the table in addition to those numbers.
that. You got to have it all, not just one or the other. You got to have it all. So we have our last webinar question, but I have some other questions that some of you lovely registrants have sent ahead of the webinar. So we'll get to those in just a minute, but to kind of wrap it all up, what benefits does investing in connectivity, employee engagement have both on the individual employees themselves and the company itself? Because it matters across the board. So Amber, do you want to kick this one off?
Yeah, so Natasha kind of touched on this a little bit, but I'm gonna go into it a little deeper. I think at GoCo, our aim is always to try to focus on the unique value proposition that each individual brings to the table. So each one of us, everyone here today, we have something that we're bringing to our organization that no one else can replicate, right? So what we're trying to focus our efforts on for the people ops team is what is that for each person, and what is it that we need to do to shift things, to get hurdles out of their way, to keep them engaged, to get them motivated, to make sure that when they come into work each day, they're fired up to do their job. And there's benefit on obviously the organization side with that, right? But also for the employee, because they have that fulfillment, they have that alignment with the value and the mission of the organization, and they know that what they are doing is making a huge impact. And then for the company side of that, we're having these high performers, high producers showing up each day, and we're not having to pull that effort out of them. They're excited about it, they're motivated by it, and so they're just showing up and they're doing it. So the company benefits as well, which is, that feels great for everyone, because it's just that cycle is really, it's coming around full circle. But what about you, Natasha?
Yeah, I agree with all of that. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there, right? At the end of the day, it really comes down to satisfaction, employee satisfaction. You want happy employees. You want people who are excited to work for your company and to be there. It creates loyalty. It lowers turnover. It makes people just feel more connected. They work together better. Happy employees work harder for your company. So if we're going back to some of that data and some of those numbers, you're going to make more, you're going to do better. And the best recommendation that we can get as employers is happy employees who tell other high performers, hey, I love where I work. I want to be there. I want to go there. And it really just builds a workforce where people want to be and where people are going to just put their all into. I always say we spend more time at work than we do at home. So make it a pleasant experience for your employees. I want to be somewhere where I'm happy and engaged. And I expect the same for everyone that works with us.
I love that. Thank you all so much. So before we hop into the Q&A, I know we have some Q&As in the webinar, as well as I have some written down as well. I wanted to let everyone know, if they're interested in learning more about GoCo and Jazz HR, let's do lattes. Book a demo at goco.io/coffee, and we will send you a gift card for a coffee, and you can chat with our team about all the lovely things that we talked about today and how GoCo or Jazz HR can work for your team. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, and then we're going to go through some of the questions that I have. So we talk a lot about in this webinar about building relationships for employees who are remote, hybrid, who are hired at the company. What about potential employees that you're interviewing? How do you build those relationships when you're hiring remote?
That's a great question. Another quick plug for Jazz HR. Make sure that you streamline it so you don't miss any employees. Make sure that you are able to set up those communications and ways for outreach. But the most important thing that we can do to really keep potential employees engaged is to make sure that we're talking to them. Have those calls, personalize those templates, make sure that you're doing the outreach. And we know that people have so many choices on where they can go and where they can work. It's been a candidates market for so long. And even with the tide starting to turn on that, there's still that perception of, as an employee, I can be picky about where I go. Maybe I'm going to spend a little bit more time away from a company to make sure that it's the right fit. So we need to make sure that we're not giving them long lags of not hearing from anybody. We're making sure that we're doing check-ins of, thanks so much for interviewing with this person. We're going to give you this timeline of when you're going to hear about that next step, and then following through with it. So making sure that when we say we're going to reach out to someone, we do.
I think too, what I love about what you just said of like keeping your commitments, Natasha, I'm aligning so strongly with that because what we've also adopted at GoCo and what we've started to do with our recruiting processes, even if someone is not um, the right fit for that position, we still want to make sure that we're maintaining that like just mutual beneficial relationship, right? So we have these new um, denial letters that we are sending out that say even Disney failed lots before he was able to make a success of it, and speaking to all these different experiences of how even though this didn't work out, this isn't a stopping point, this is just a pause before your next great adventure, so keep going. And because we understand and we want to make sure that they're still motivated in their process, so we've actually tried to build that experience all the way through, even if we are having to part ways, still keeping it in that space. And then for that onboarding experience, we actually have started to consider asking questions about, tell us a little bit more about yourself. We ask about 2 fun facts and we use those fun facts that they supply so that on their first day, when we intro them into the Slack, into the organization through Slack, we get to share those 2 fun facts about them. And I remember when I was going through my onboarding process, I spent a large amount of time trying to decide what my 2 fun facts were because I was like, these are going to define how that they see me. And so I chose Jane Austen and teacups because those are my passions. But I spent a lot of time and it made me feel really special that they were asking me, what is the song that pumps me up? And what are some facts about me? So I was already feeling like a part of that exciting culture with the organization. And then thinking about trying to attract that talent, we at GoCo like to share our experiences that our employees are having with our social media and our LinkedIn pages. So some of these really fun stories or adventures that we do have and we get to speak to, we've put them out there in that space so people can really see that we're not just saying that we're a fun space and that we have really awesome, exciting, engaging culture. Here's some of those initiatives and what it actually looks like as it's taken place. And so that's been really, really good for us as well.
I love that. I'm another Jane Austen fan, so I would have reached out to you.
Yeah, the 2 facts on the first day was definitely something I thought about for about a week leading up to my first day at GoCo. So I'm with you on that. Well, thank you all so much. We had another question about icebreakers. What are some other icebreakers you recommend for remote and hybrid employees besides, just give us some fun facts about yourself? Or I know that at GoCo, we also do 2 truths and a lie as well. So what are some other fun icebreakers that y'all recommend for teams all over the world?
Um, I'll actually jump into 2 truths and a lie since you just mentioned it. So we have it. I've never played such a competitive virtual game before, but 2 truths and a lie happens at our community all hands every Friday. Our new hires intro themselves and they share 2 truths, one lie. We pop up a poll with it, and the team gets to guess which one is the lie. It has become very serious. People will lean into the screen to see where the eye contact is going at or where the eyes are moving while the speaker is talking because they're trying to figure out if that's a lie or not. But something else that we also have started to do. Oh my gosh, I just lost my frame of thought. What was another one that I was, well, let me think about it, Natasha. Let me pass it over to you while I try to gather my thoughts back.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll say it's always a balance. I'm a huge introvert most of the time in my regular life. And so those 2 truths and a lie, and anytime you have to think about facts for yourself, I am the person that has to like sit there and write everything down and really overthink it and think through it. So I love those, but I also like things that are a little lower maintenance where I don't have to worry about what I'm sharing about myself and really start to overthink what's going on. So something like a little trivia, Kaylee, you mentioned that earlier, but maybe a few questions to put out there just to break the ice, things like that. Always love those. Or, we did on our team once, we had a list of questions and then you had to send in a picture. So through our Slack channel, everyone posted a picture to answer that question. And then if you felt comfortable, you could tell the story behind it. So it was, something like, what's your favorite hobby? I'm a CrossFitter. So it was a picture of me at the gym. It's stuff like that you really get to know people, but a little bit low maintenance, and it gives them the chance and the opportunity to decide what to say and what to share.
Tying back to that too, we actually did something where we kind of do like a virtual scavenger hunt, but it's just a one item thing. So we have an actual day where we do something called show and share, and we theme the scavenger hunt items around, and it's only a 20-minute sync up, these items that you go find. So in March, everything was green. Everyone had to go find green things, and you get taco points. So more points to go shopping. But ideas that we've had before is like, go find the biggest book in your house. And during Go Compete, it was really exciting because now we're getting people to stand up, to walk around, to move around, to be a little more active from their normal sitting space. So that's also another fun one, is you can tie the theme into your activity, if they are home or if they're in the office, to go and find something that of that item to get them moving around and kind of get that energy up and going too.
Yes, show and share is always a fun time of the month for me. I have to share this Q&A comment from Michelle. They said at their last position, they did something similar to what y'all are mentioning. They had new hires fill out a form so the company could learn a little bit more about them. And then once a month, they conducted an in-person orientation. So during the orientation, they would give each new hire 2 items that represented their answer. So I just love that. I think that's so fun to both get to know the new hire as well as show the new hire that you really care and appreciate them being at your company. So I love that. And then also Katie mentioned that they use the Games app on Teams a lot. So you might need to look in some game options for Slack. Our next question is, has your company culture remained the same, improved, or changed since COVID, besides going, remote or hybrid? How has the culture itself shifted, do you think, for your company and just in general, if you'd rather answer that?
Natasha, I'll let you lead with this one.
That's a great question. I think that one of the biggest things that came out of the pandemic was the way that people think about work changed. It stopped being a company focus on how we think that people should be working or what we think is the best for them, and really gave the people the opportunity to prove they can be a remote workforce and they're just as productive. They're going to work as hard. It gave people more flexibility. I mentioned it earlier, but it really allows you to expand your dimensions of diversity that are working for your company by giving people the space to say, this is my life, this is who I am, these are the other things about me that are not work related, and how do I tie that into bringing myself, my authentic self, and my best self to work. And I think we've seen that a lot of people feel more comfortable sharing when they do have challenges. I need to go pick up my child from school, but I can log back in after, or I need the flexibility for a doctor's appointment, but I know that I have the flexibility to bring that time or make up that time later on. When we let people feel empowered in their life, they're really able to make those decisions for themselves and tend to again, be more loyal or work a little harder. So really, that's the experience that we've seen. It's the experience that we've had. And I think a big part of why we're seeing that the workforce isn't necessarily changing back to the way that it was in 2019. Employees came out and our workforce said, this is what we want to do now. We've proved that we can do it. And so we are adapting to staying remote or becoming hybrid, not necessarily forcing people to come back into the office when they proved for 2-3 years that they don't have to.
Yeah. So I think another perspective that I want to add to that is actually a little different. So I have not been with GoCo for very long, a little under a year. And so in my previous role, I came from my 100% in office position, so I can speak to that experience. And what really happened was we were forced into a situation where we were not equipped or ready to go 100% remote. And so there was a lot of hurt to the culture from that position because everything we had experienced was in person, face to face. And so there was a huge barrier between us. So when we were able to come back in, all of the culture that we had really built and established before the pandemic, we had to start all over, and we had to revisit that and really think, okay, how are we going to avoid this from happening again in the future, and really thinking about technology in this workspace at a different level. And so that was a real learning in that area and in that industry to figure out, okay, how are we now going to make sure that we are enhancing this to ensure we have communication? And as crazy as this might sound for some of you, instant messaging, so Slack or Teams, was introduced because of that experience, because the traditional way of emailing, it wasn't a fast enough way to communicate anymore. So we had to move as quickly as the workforce was now moving because of post-pandemic world. So a little different of an experience there, but still lots of takeaways and learnings from it, of just the importance of being willing and ready to adapt and acting on it.
Perfect. I love both of those points of view. A question that kind of goes off the back of that is, how do you handle employees who might not have access to, the proper equipment needed to work remote, or employees who might be a little bit more susceptible to internet issues? How do y'all go about handling those types of situations?
That is a tough one. Amber, I know you just said that you came from somewhere, so I'll let you take the majority of it. Before I came to Employ, I was working for city government. So when the pandemic hit and we had to switch, that was a challenge. There were people who legitimately didn't have a computer at home. So really having to pivot and to know that we're going to have to invest in making sure that our employees were equipped, really adapting. I was in learning and development at the time. So trying to figure out how to have a 4-hour training with people who are dialing in was an adventure. Definitely learned how to be creative, but it's just so important for companies to pivot. Amber, do you want to talk a little bit more about your experience there?
Yes, what my experience was standing in line at any electronics store I could find at the time that would let me buy anything, literally anything that they would give us, right? So it was great, like it was great like story to have now. But I think that it really showed that this idea of having a station, that a designated workspace in like your own area didn't need to be as big as it used to be, or didn't need to be as concrete, like it could be really movable. And so adjusting over from having an actual monitor and PC, right, we adjusted to the space of like everyone got laptops and we started working off laptops, and then that allowed us the ability to take our work home, to again start having a little more of that flexibility. And I think that that was something else that we experienced. If we shift into the GoCo space where everyone is already equipped to work in both areas, these things happen. We were just talking earlier about how Houston's getting crazy rain. And this morning my power flickered and it took about 25 minutes for my Wi-Fi to restart. And that gave me an extra level of anxiety, thinking about the webinar today. And what can we do? Sometimes things are going to happen that are beyond the control of our employees. And if it's one-off things, like all we can do is extend compassion and understanding and just say like, okay, like this is tough, but we'll figure it out. No pressure. I usually people are already giving themselves a hard enough time. Feeling the stress of the moment, that all that we can do as HR, or even giving that back to our managers, is to say, hey, just give them some support and be understanding. And if it is a pattern of repeat behavior, then really taking a step back and asking the question, what is it that I can do for you to help support you so that this can be more successful? And that might look like a company stipend that pays for those services to ensure that they have that strong connectivity. Or maybe it's talking about finding other areas within that community that they can go and work from, like a co-working space. So just really sitting down, and rather than jumping to conclusions, just asking those questions to try to find those resources that are going to best fit the needs of each situation.
Perfect. So off the back of stress and understanding, we had a question come in that I'd be really interested to get y'all's thoughts on. It's, do you have suggestions for remote employees who are having trouble working together or getting along? So when we were in office, it's a little easier to just, bring them into a conference room and try to get the situation handled. What about if they're fully remote? How do you suggest going about that?
That's such a great question. That's one that's definitely in my world now. People business partner is a lot of conflict resolution, and just, I think to Amber's point, really getting people to show that empathy and to really listen to each other. I think especially when we're remote, it's so easy to jump to conclusions. We don't know what's going on in someone's life. We don't see them. They might not feel as comfortable telling us. So where you have someone in the office that you talk to every day, they're going to hear more tidbits about your life. Or if you got a flat tire or something like that, when you get in, it's a natural conversation. If you're remote, it doesn't come up, right? It might not. And so really asking each employee to take a step back, I typically meet with them individually and ask them what's going on. And I ask for the why behind the why. Very rarely are people upset about what that surface level issue is. So this person called off 3 times. Okay, they called off 3 times. Why? What is it about that is affecting you? And once you start having those conversations and really digging in, you find out that it's not because Bob took off 3 days. It's that John feels like he's really overworked. He's overwhelmed right now. He's going through something in his work life or in his personal life that is making it a challenge. And he's feeling that pressure and he's feeling that hurt. And so we really need to troubleshoot what is going on in your life that's making you feel like this is an issue. Or if it's truly a personality conflict, we find that out too, right? So what are some things that we can do to make sure that the interactions that you are having are going to be a little bit more positive. Make sure that we have a conversation of, this is what this person's communication style is like. If we're only communicating in Slack and email, that might make someone feel like they're being rude or something like that, but maybe they're just more straightforward. So now we have come up with a plan where the person who is a little blunter in their communication will add a smiley face or add a tone. Or I work with someone who, when you're on the phone with him, will say big smile when he's smiling really big, so that you know, because he tends to be a little monotone, but it cracks me up, but also I think breaks the ice a little bit there and really helps navigate those intentions so that you are able to think past the, this is how this appears to me, and so now I'm upset, into the, okay, well, maybe it's a difference in communication, maybe it's a difference in personality, maybe I just need to take that step back and really show that empathy and ask the questions, even if I needed help to get there, where that's the expectation and the tone for myself moving forward.
So I'm cheesing in my, well, I'm cheesing on camera as well, because jumping onto your empathy thing, I had to lead a training once for managers, and I created this graphic that I'd gotten this idea off of, called an empathy iceberg, and it was just an iceberg, and at the top it talked about the things that we see that were on the person, and then it talks about all these different life experiences and circumstances underneath the water that we don't think about. And it was like a light bulb moment in the room for some of our people managers, because they were just like, oh, I guess I just never really took it into consideration. And I think it's like, naturally, we're not trying to doubt people, we just aren't thinking about it, right? And so tying back to your communication style point, we actually utilize, as a resource, this could maybe be helpful for some of y'all for your organization, but we've actually started to make that shift towards becoming a strengths-based organization. So we use something called Clifton Strengths that's provided by Gallup. I'm not an advocate, nor am I paid by them. I just absolutely love this, because it's made my job a lot easier. And we have all of our employees complete a assessment to figure out what are their top 5 strengths. So what are the top 5 talents that they have? And what we're now asking them to do is, we have like custom Zoom backgrounds that tell you what each person's strengths are. And we have them put it on their Slack profile. And so when we're having people who are not having, or that are not able to communicate effectively, we're asking them, hey, what does their strengths say about them? What do you know when you work with those types of strengths? And so they're able to then go back, and we have resources where they can read about this and understand, okay, Amber's number 1 strength is introspection. So what does that mean for us? And then I go and I read, it means like she takes everything internally and thinks about it. So I need to be mindful of whatever we talk about now. She's probably going to come back and ask me more questions about it later. And so that has also really helped when we're talking about culture barriers or even language barriers that come to the table for people. Sometimes we're not talking to someone whose first language is English, and so there's a misuse of words, and it's an accident. And so just making sure that we're being really mindful of what those barriers are, and giving our employees the tools that they need in order to really have success in having this communication and conversations with other people.
Perfect. I love all of that. Amber, we actually have a question specifically for you. What is your favorite part about being a people operations manager? They just recently learned about the term, so they'd love a little more information.
Yeah. So don't quote me on this. This is my perspective, but what I've really seen and I love about people operations is HR really gets to focus on like that compliance business driver aspect of taking care of the organization and all of the things, policies and things like that. And with people ops, I think it's unique to the name. The focus is really on the employee and on that person, right? So on the people, of trying to make sure that we're also adjusting and pivoting the business to set them up for success and to put them in a space where they are able to thrive. And so thinking about leveling up or talent enhancement or learning and development and things like that. And so it's really exciting to get to have these stay interviews with people and to talk to them and say, well, what do you love about GoCo? And well, what's your next step? And just really getting to learn and tap into that, of that people experience of, it's not having conversations just because something bad or because something has come up and we're having to have that real serious conversation. It's getting to like just check in and see how people are doing, and like just focus on the wellness and the well-being of people, and create change in this space where they feel really happy, heard, and valued. And that's what I love. I love that aspect of my role.
Perfect. Well, thank you all both so much. Natasha, Amber, is there any final thoughts that you want to share with the group or anything that you'd like to leave on before we head out?
I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much to everybody for tuning in and for listening and for your questions and everything else. And then of course, Kaylee, to you and Amber, I've had so much fun learning about what you guys are doing at GoCo. And I also have been taking notes. So definitely bringing a lot of ideas back to the organization. So just thank you so much for your openness and your insight.
Yes, thank you, Natasha. I've also learned so many cool things that Amber and I will definitely probably have a meeting later today to talk about some of your great insight and tips.
Yeah. This has been an incredible experience. I'm really grateful for it. So thank you to both of you and to everyone for taking the time today. And the one thing that I just want to share is no matter how big or small the idea is, if it's something that matches your brand or your culture, there's no guidebook that says this is the best fit. One size does not fit all when it comes to your organization's culture. Focus on what your brand is and what your mission is, and tie it back to that. If your brand is built around coconuts, make that be your driver and build coconuts into it, because that's how we do things at GoCo. Whatever it is that's unique to you, run with it, and don't be afraid of that, because people want to have that sense of community around things. So that would be my one thought. But thank you all so much for today. This was awesome.
Yes, thank you both. And thank you for the chat, for all of the amazing questions, all the amazing insight, all the great debate around whether chili or beans belong in chili or not. Made my day. So I really appreciate it. I will be sending the recording of this webinar later this week. So be on the lookout for that. And then if you have any questions or anything, feel free to contact us and we will leave it at that. So thank you everyone for joining. I hope you all have an amazing rest of your week. Thank you, Natasha. Thank you, Amber, once again.
Thanks.
Have a good one. Bye.